kick off class. What did we learn yesterday?
We learned that if our heads weren't spinning, you weren't doing your job right.
That is absolutely correct.
We learned how to install the framework for Node.js through Express. What I'm gathering is Express is like another additional framework for the Node.js server.
It is, yes.
Okay.
So what we are, it is possible to use Node without Express and to accomplish everything that we have done, but it would take about 2 or 3 times as many lines of code. So what Express does is it sets us up really well for making API servers, right? So Node can be used for any kind of server, but we're learning how to make an API, right? And an API is that application programming interface. It's all about how we set up our code on the back end to interface with the front end. And so Express is a framework for making API servers a little easier to create. And so that's what we learned how to install and start using yesterday. And we are going to get more practice today. Instead of doing a server where we're adding things together, today we are going to set up another server from scratch. We're going to get more practice with the syntax. We are going to connect it to that chat app that we started with a couple weeks ago, right? We're going to revive that. And then we are going to start connecting in and creating our API endpoints for sending and receiving messages. And if we are being particularly ambitious tonight, we may even connect to our SQL database and be able to pull in data from SQL to and from SQL. With that said, I do not want to speed through anything tonight, especially not the last 10 or 15 minutes. So whatever we do not cover today, we'll just roll into next week as well. So going to get more practice with Express tonight. We're going to get more practice with our React. We're going to learn a little bit about use effect and a React hook. Does anyone know what another React hook is that we're already using?
State. Use state.
Yep, use state is a hook. And so we will be using effect tonight, which is a way that we can make code run when our React component first mounts or when it first shows up. So we're going to be touching on that a little bit tonight. Any light bulb moments from yesterday? Any dark matter moments from yesterday where it was like, oh man, I could really go through another run through of that concept? Anything that really made sense yesterday? Anything that didn't really make sense from yesterday?
I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so when you're naming the different files, you had named the one app.js and the other. I'm wondering, does the name matter for the file? Because remember when I had that problem where I had named all the files the same, but they were different file types, and then it produced an error on the other end? Does it matter what you name the JavaScript files?
Yes-ish. So in our React app in particular, it has to be index.js. And in our index.js, that's when we import our app.js file. So app.js doesn't have to actually be called app.js, but whatever the correct file name is does have to be imported in our index.js. And the file, that index.js file, has to be called index. On the server, it does not have to be called index.js because I believe NodeMan will actually execute all of our JavaScript, but I'm not confident in that answer. So that is something that I can't say for sure. However, it is pretty common to name your index.js in the server server.js. Or I have even seen start.js and api.js. So it doesn't matter as much on the back end, On the React project, it does need to say index.js, but then you can change the name of the app.js file as long as you update it in index.js. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but if you have changed file names and do not have things working, feel free to share your screen and we can go through and kind of see where we're at. The good news is tonight we are starting from scratch again, at least for the back end. For the front end, we're going to be using the chat app. And so we won't be starting from scratch on chat on the front end, but we will be starting from scratch on the back end. Any other questions?
Are we gonna need 3 monitors tonight?
The more monitors, the better. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
With that said, if you have at least one external monitor, we are going to have the same number of windows tonight that we had yesterday. So we are going to have lots of windows open for our front end, for our back end, and then I will start 2 live shares tonight. So you've got 2 of my windows on top of it, plus the window that's running our front end in the browser, and then possibly even Beekeeper as well. So lots of windows coming your way tonight. However, it is very good practice because this is not just something that we do in class. It is very common as a full stack developer for you to be able to manage that number of windows. So it is very common to have that many windows open. And instead of having my code in the workforce, you would have some documentation open, or maybe the Slack window where you're chatting with your colleagues or whatever it is. So it is very common to have the need to balance that many windows. Any other questions before we dive in tonight? Okay. Give me 1 second. I am going to share the chat app. That is something that I meant to link to in the outline and did not get a chance. However, while I am getting set up, in the week 16, day 4 outline, Jesse sent an email about keeping your laptops and finding we're partnering with Working Solutions, who is providing the funds so that you can keep your laptop after the cohort. We worked with them in cohort 2. They were awesome. We are working with them again this cohort. So if you would like to keep your laptop at graduation, you have to fill out a form. I linked to it and created an assignment in it in Canvas called Assignment 52. In that assignment, let me share my screen. I linked to the form that you need to fill out. That needs to be filled out by next Friday. I did create the assignment in Canvas as a reminder. So for this submission, just tell us your favorite thing about the Mac, your least favorite thing about the Mac, and then just have a sentence in there of, you know, I filled out the form, I want to keep my laptop, or it's fine, I'll just give the laptop back at the end of the course. So this is no cost to you, but if you do want to keep your laptop, we do need that form filled out. If you have any questions, you can hit me up or direct them directly at Jesse, and we will try and get that answered. But any questions about this, this is the form, same form that Jesse emailed, some basic information to insert, to input here. And this is just so we can work with smart solutions, Working Solutions, to get the essentially grant funding for your laptops.
If you have filled the form out before, is it the same form?
If you filled out the form already, you do not need to fill out the form again. But if you just go into Canvas and just drop in a note that says like, hey, I filled out the form, this is what I love about my Mac, this is what I hate about the Mac, your assignment will be complete there. But thank you for calling that out. If you already filled out this form, you do not need to fill it out again. This is only if you have not filled out the form already.
And it don't count like towards points, right?
As long as you you'll get full credit for the assignment if you just submit like, I love my Mac because, I hate my Mac because, and then a sentence of like, I'm fine turning the laptop back in at the end of the program, or I filled out my form hoping that I get to keep the laptop. That is all that assignment is. It doesn't matter if you decide to keep it or not. That will not affect your points for that assignment.
Max, I have a
Thank
question
you.
about that. Is that the same as the Wanto? The Wanto folks that had us complete an application in cohort 2?
Possibly,
Okay.
but I
Okay.
cannot confidently answer that question, so
Okay,
I'm going to
never mind.
refrain from
Yeah, I
doing
was
it.
just gonna ask if it, okay, thank you.
It is, because when I filled it out, if you click female, this thing popped up about a program that One2 has for women. So I think it's the same thing, because I filled out another form for another application for One2. So I think it's the same thing.
Oh, okay, yeah, I was wondering, because I remember they had us fill out an application and they said it could open us or like put us in the pool for other services. And so I was just curious if that was the same situation for this.
I know
Yeah.
we worked with Working Solutions for cohort 2. I just don't know the relationship between Wanto and Working Solutions. So that's I can't comment on that directly, but I would not be surprised if it was the same as cohort 2.
Okay, no worries.
Okie doke. So we're gonna dive in tonight. I have just posted a zip file in the CIC live stream channel. And I will attempt to send it in Zoom. No, I'm not. You have to get it from Slack because Zoom does not make it easy to download files. You know what? One thing I will do is I will put it directly in the outline, which should make it a little bit easier to get to. 16. Let me drop this in chat and get link and outline. Okay. So in the I'm going to do it from the outline. If you want to do it from Slack, you can also do it from there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this copy React code and click on that link, and it's going to bring me into a Google Drive. All you need to do is click this download button right here. So I'm going to click download. That's going to get my zip file downloaded. And then I'm going to do this all in Finder. So I'm going to go to my desktop, to my code folder, to week 16. I only have a day 3 folder. I'm going to right click and create a new folder for day 4. I'm going to double click into day 4 and then go to my downloads folder and drag out my chat.zip. Now, if you do not have a downloads folder in your doc, you can open another Finder window by hitting Command N, going to downloads over on the left, finding the chat.zip that we just downloaded, and drag it over from your downloads folder into day 4. Once we have it in day 4, I'm going to double click on it to extract it. And now this says chat, but this is not descriptive enough for me because this is really my chat front end. And we're about to start working in our chat backend. Very easy to get confused between these two, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit enter once to rename that file, that folder, and I'm going to say chat-front end. I am then going to take my chat front end and drag it into my VS Code. Once I am in my chat front end, I'm going to right click on package.json and open an integrated terminal, or you can hit Control-tilde, or you can go up to the terminal up at the top and click on new terminal. However you get there, whatever way you would like to do that, that is fine. So I am going to come down here and do an npm run start, and I immediately get an error that says command not found. Well, that is because whenever you get someone else's project, they don't always include the node modules folder because it's so big. However, the project will include a package.json, which includes all of the dependencies of this project. So what I can do is down here in the terminal, Shanjay, I see you, I'm coming to you in 1 second. I am going to run npm I or npm install, the same thing, and I'm not going to specify any project or any package names. So when I hit enter here, what it's going to do is npm is going to look in my package.json file, see all of these dependencies in here and install them for me. So when we don't specify a package name after install, it knows to install all of the packages in my package.json file. So I'm going to run npm install, and that is going to take a minute. And when it is done running, we can do npm run start or npm start. That is going to start my server up for me and pop open Chrome. And Chrome should look like this. So we're going to stop there and poll, make sure everyone was able to download that zip file, unzip it, make sure it's in the day 4 folder, open it in VS Code, open the terminal, run npm install, and then npm run start. And then you should have this in your browser. And if you're able to get this to pull up in your browser, you are all caught up. With that said, Shanjay, what is your question?
I just wanted you to slow down. Because I was trying to do those things as you were doing them. But I'll try again.
Let me just
Is it
recap
possible that
let me recap the steps. So what we
Yeah,
did
I was
is
kind of writing them down because I want to kind of memorize them.
well,
But
be
yeah.
careful with that because we're
So,
using
I'll
this
listen.
as like a starting point. And so
Just the terminal part
Okay.
where you're, yeah.
Okay, and your internet's breaking up a little bit. I think it's your internet, so just a heads up in case we break up. But I started from the chat.zip. I downloaded that zip file. Then I went to Finder and went into my desktop, my code, my week 16. I created day 4, and I took that downloaded zip file and put it into the day 4 folder. I then double clicked on the zip file, which gave me a chat folder, and then I renamed it to chat-frontend because we're going to be in our backend in 1 second. I then opened this chat frontend folder in VS Code. Once it's open in VS Code, I then went to terminal and new terminal, or you can right click and open an integrated terminal. That pops up our terminal down here. The only 2 commands we need to run in the terminal, as long as this terminal is in the right spot, is npm install. And what that is going to do is give us a node modules folder and install everything that's in this dependencies list in package.json. So once we run npm install, that will take a minute. And as soon as it is done running, we can just run npm start. And that will start our React server and bring us to localhost 3000 in the browser, or make a good liar out of me. And once we are able to get to that, we are all caught up.
Max, was that week 16 folder, day 4?
Week 16, day 4, yes.
Thank you.
Was it npm run start or npm start?
Those are synonymous. Either one is completely fine, as is npm I or npm install. They both do the same exact thing.
Yeah.
You will find developers are among the laziest creatures you can find, and they will not want to type out npm install if they can just type in npm I. And the same goes for npm start.
Max, I have some error messages.
Go ahead, share screen.
Can you do the live share really quick so I can get my
yep.
screens ready? Thank you.
Good call. And we're going to have another live share coming your way. Oh, wrong link. We're gonna have another live share coming your way, but we've got to get it set up. Christy, go ahead. Sorry, I had to stop sharing my screen.
Okay, let's see. All right, so you see these,
Okay, so you can update later. How do you launch VS Code?
from here.
Okay. I am worried that your VS Code is not installed in your applications folder. And that is why you're getting extension host version mismatch. And the thing that scares me the most is this unsupported right here. So
I kind of had something like this before, and my VS Code was in the wrong place, and then we went and put it in the right place.
yeah, let me just do a quick check here. Let me just make sure that your VS Code is, come on, you can do it. There we go. Open Sesame. Open, oh, screw it, I'll just do it by hand. Can you drag that Finder window over to the other monitor?
A Finder, oh yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
This one?
that's good. Yep. I just need to check in here.
I'm trying to move this poll.
Oh. Okay, let me try yes. Okay, well. All right, it looks like it was just cranky and needed a restart.
Oh,
So I just quit it and reopened it, and that seemed to get rid of all of your errors.
so now I just need to go to package.json and do the npm restart.
Npm install first,
Oh, right.
and then npm run start, and then you'll be caught up.
Okay, thanks. Where did it go? Wait, no, we changed it. I can't find it.
I thought it was much worse than it actually was. It looked like VS Code just needed a good quit and restart.
Hey, Max, sorry. NPM,
Enter. Nope,
Oh.
npm space I enter, and that's going to install the node packages for you, the npm packages, and then npm space start and enter, and that's going to start up React for you.
There's nothing in my terminal. Like, I don't see anywhere to write.
Share screen again.
Testing. So see down here, I don't see anywhere to write.
Oh, you're the queen of problems tonight, aren't you, Christy?
I guess so. What is going on?
I do not know. Let's try, just try it again. There's like, Christy, you broke the terminal. What is happening right now?
I don't know.
Maybe force close VS Code and open it up again.
Well, but we already did that. It's not a bad suggestion. I'm just like confused as to like, oh,
here's-
okay.
Wait, that's something else.
No, no, you're good. So let's, before I boot you, I'm just going to do your install
Okay, thank you.
and your start just to make sure that you don't have.
Look at all those errors.
Oh, you know why? Because look at what folder we're in. We're in day 4. So we need to CD into our chat front end. And now if we run a PWD, now we're in the right spot. So now if we npm I, that's going to do our node modules folder. And now we can npm start. And on some monitor in a second, you should have the chat app pop up.
Open.
All right, you're caught up.
Oh, thank you.
Don't break your computer anymore,
I
Christy.
know, right?
Those were weird bugs that you've had tonight. Those aren't anything you did wrong. All right, we've got 7 votes in. Hopefully get a couple more in. Oh, thank you guys for voting. We got 10 in, so we are good to go unless anyone has any final questions.
Max, can you hold on for just a minute? Can you set up a breakout room?
You should be able to do it now because I just made you co-host. If you can't, let me know and I can do it for you. Okay, so we've got our front end working. Now we need to go over all of this again, but for the back end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go File, New Window, and File, Open Folder. And in my desktop, my code, week 16, day 4, I'm going to do New Folder in here. Now I'm going to call this Chat Backend. And so I'm going to create that, and then I'm going to open it. That is going to pop me open in this blank folder. And if I go Terminal and New Terminal, I'm now in my Chat Backend folder, and I know I'm there because I can run a pwd and see that I'm in the right spot here. Now, does anyone remember yesterday what command we ran to set up a new backend node project? We ran a lot of them, but what was that very first one?
NPX node man.
That's going to start the node server for us. But before we can even start the server, we need to install some things. And before we can install those things, what do we have to do? We need to npm init, because right now we don't have the package.json file. And we don't want to do that by hand. So what we're going to do is npm init, and we're going to do that -y. And that -y is going to say, just assume that we want to use all of the defaults. So it's going to assume the version is 1.0 and the name of the project is going to be the name of the folder and all of that good stuff. So now when we go into our package.json, we now have a starting place. So when we install files, when we install packages, it knows to save those packages as dependencies in package.json. Nicole, all we did is we created a new folder called chat-backend in our week 16, day 4 folder, and then opened that in VS Code. Then once we got it open in VS Code, we went to the terminal, opened a new terminal, and ran npm init -y. That got us our package.json. And now, what is the first thing that we need to install? What framework did we just say we're building our API with? Express. And the other thing that we're going to need, because we're going to be using our post requests and our body, is we're going to need body-parser. So npm is set up in that if we keep adding the names of packages here, it will automatically install all of them for us. So there's actually one more that we're going to need, and that's cores. So when I hit enter, this is not only going to install Express for me, it is also going to install body parser and cores. And we know that all of that worked because in our dependencies in our package.json, we now have those 3 packages showing up. So we're going to do one more step here, which is getting our hello world working, and then we'll stop to poll and make sure everyone's staying up. So I'm going to create a new file here, and I'm going to call it server.js. Yesterday, we called it index. I'm kind of curious to see if we can call it something else. So we're going to call it server.js today, and we're going to see if that works. And then we need to start using Express. So in order to use any npm package, we need to require it in. Requiring it is a type of import, right? We're importing it from our npm package. Now that we have access to Express, we have to use it. So we're going to say const server equals Express. Okay, now this is a good boilerplate. This is a good starting point for any server, because any server that we set up, any API that we create, we always want to have a server.get, and that server.get is going to take a route, right? That route is saying, what URL should I respond to here? What URL matches this endpoint? So by default, we're going to just do an empty slash. That's kind of like the index.html, right? That's saying that's going to come up no matter when we just go to localhost 3001, that is the endpoint that is going to match. And like all endpoints, we get a rec and a res, the request coming in and the response that we send back. That's coming in. Express is giving us that. And we know Express is giving us that because server is coming from Express, and Express, ignore that line. Sorry, that shouldn't have been there. Express is coming in from our require, which is coming in from our npm package. So all we're going to do is say res.send. I'm going to say welcome to my fancy API. Christy, give your whole computer a reboot and then come back and see if that shakes something loose. You've got a lot of CRUD going on, and it's not the create, read, update, and delete kind of CRUD that we like. So I would just give your whole computer a reboot and see if that helps. You're muted.
Said BRB.
Okay, we are one line away and one command away from being able to test all of this. So when we're in here, we haven't told our server, hey, be prepared to listen for requests coming in. So what we need to do is we're going to use our server command again, and we're going to say, yo, Express, listen on port 3001. And once you are listening, go into this function and console log out API running time to partay. Okay, that is actually everything we need to get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start another live share for you guys and dump this into Slack and rename my other live share so that it is clear that it is the front end. And now down in my terminal, all I need to do is npx my nodemon. And when I do an npx nodemon, it crashes and says starting node index.js. And then it says cannot find module index.js. All right, well, now we're paying the price because we didn't call our server.js index.js. Nodemon is cranky with me because it doesn't have that default nodemon index.js file to start. So let's try this. Let's do npx nodemon server.js. And now you notice we got API running time to party. So we can call this file something other than index.js. But if we do, we need to specify it in our nodemon command so it knows what file we're starting. Okay, so we've got server.js running. We need to do the last final step here, which is go to Chrome, go to localhost 3001, and hopefully you get a welcome to my fancy API right there. That was a lot. If anyone got lost at a certain step, just let me know what one, we can go over it. Otherwise, we're going to poll and make sure you guys get caught up.
No, Max, I think you lost us.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let me do an overview of everything, and then if you're hold on, I'm not going to taking the poll back from you guys. Let me do a rerun of all of this, and then I will start the poll and give you time to catch up. Okay. We created a new folder, week 16, day 4. We, in that folder, we created another folder called chat-backend. We opened chat-backend in our VS Code. Once we got into VS Code, we opened a new terminal and we ran npm init-y. npm init-y created our package.json file for us. Then we ran npm I express
Is it
body parser
space dash
and course. Yes. So it's npm init space -y. And then down here, it's npm space I space, and then a space between all of the packages. So express space body dash parser space course. And the way npm works is if you keep on putting spaces and keep on specifying other packages, it's going to install those. So we installed all 3 packages all at once. We could do npm install express, enter, and then wait for it to be done, and then do an npm install body parser, enter, and wait for it to be done. But we just installed all 3 of them at the same time. Either way would accomplish the same thing. Now, we've got everything installed that we needed to. So we went over and we created a new file called server.js. And in our server.js, we created our const express and we required express. Require is a form of import that pulls that in from npm. Then we said, great, now that we've got express, let's use express to create a new server. And if you're looking at other people's express code, sometimes they call this app instead of server. I like calling it server. You can call it whatever you want as long as you are consistent. You will see app a lot, and it is they're considering their express server an app. However, I like to call it server. So I called mine server. Then we made a get request, right? And we said, hey, when someone gets our API URL with nothing else in the URL field, we want to res.sendBack in the response, send back, welcome to my fancy API. Then finally, what we need to do is tell the server, hey, as long as you are running, listen for requests coming in on port 3001. And once you have started listening for requests, just console log out for me that the API is running. Because if we don't have this line in here, sometimes it's hard to tell when our API is erroring out and not starting. So what we do is we console log out API running. And then finally, now that we've got all of that done, we come down to our terminal and we do an npx nodemon server.js and hit enter. That is going to get our API server running. And now when we go to the browser and look at localhost 3001, we get welcome to my fancy API. All of that said, I know that was a lot of steps. Do not hesitate to ask questions. I'm going to relaunch the poll. Do not vote you're lost without coming off of mute and telling me why you're lost first.
Can you move that? Okay, thank you.
And we're going to stay here for a minute or two because I know this is a lot of steps. Do not worry about rushing to catch up. Take your time. Make sure you understand it. Even if you got it working, go back, review your code, make sure you understand what every single letter and every single piece of syntax is doing. If you do not understand it, let me know and we'll go through an explanation.
When nodemon crashed, what did you do after that to get it to work?
You want to do a Control-C. Control-C is like the magic universal terminal command to say, shut up, stop whatever you're trying to do, and give me a new terminal thing that I can type in.
Okay.
And it's actually control there. That's one of the few things on the Mac that is control, not command.
Yeah.
So I got my chat back end open, but I'm lost on what to
Okay, I got it.
Awesome. Good work, Shaz.
I'm sorry.
Christy,
I
what
was,
I'm sorry. I thought he was done. I said I got my chat back in open, but I missed all of the stuff. Like,
so what you're gonna do in your chat
Let's go back on.
backend,
the,
make sure that you're in chat backend in
uh-huh.
your terminal, and then do this npm install express body dash parser and cores command.
How do I? Okay, wait a minute. Because I don't. There's nothing in there. So was I supposed to do something in the terminal?
Nope, that's the first terminal command. Do you have a package.json file?
No, I don't have that in the chat.
Okay. Then start with npm init -y.
But how am I getting to? Oh, here it is. Sorry. Okay, say that again.
npm space init init space -y.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And that
Okay.
should create a package.json file for you.
Yes.
Now you're going to do this npm install express body parser and cores.
And, it's body cursor. That's like body dash.
Body dash parser.
Okay, that's running.
Okay, and when that is done, you're going to create a new file called server.js, just in VS Code.
You said server?
Server.js, or you can call it index.js, whatever you prefer.
I did server.
Okay. Open that and go to my live share and just copy and paste all of this code just to catch you up.
Okay.
And then the last thing you're going to need to do, Christy, is do an npx nodemon server.js in your terminal, and then open up a new browser window and go to localhost 3001, and you'll be all caught up.
Okay.
And we only have 7 votes in so far, so you've got a couple minutes to until someone gets us to 10 votes to catch up. Eight votes in.
Alright.
Give everyone 1 more minute.
I did all my ones, but my localhost one isn't working. So
Go ahead and share screen.
maybe it's my Nomon.
npx nodemon server.js. We use npm whenever we want to install something. We use npx whenever we want to execute something.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
It's saying no mine app crashed. Why? How could it crash?
It's my Zoom.
I got you, Nicole.
Okay.
Christy, go ahead and share your screen.
Yeah, where is?
So scroll up. Did you do npx nodemon server.js?
Yes, right.
Keep going up. Okay, so it scroll down. It says cannot find too far. Cannot find module express. So that means your npm install command didn't work. So you need to control C out of your server.
Anywhere?
In the terminal, anywhere in the terminal, yeah. Just hit control C. And now you need to npm install express. and then npx nodemon server.js again. So if you hit the up arrow twice, it will rerun that command, or it will re-enter it for you. Yep, enter. Okay, now you should be caught up. If you just open up localhost 3001 in your browser, you should be able to see your API message.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Okay. That puts us at 10, so we are able to move forward here. All right, so we've got our front end set up and we've got our back end set up. Now, yesterday, what we did is we were in our app.js file, right? And what we did is we made it so when a button was clicked on, the message, the two numbers got sent to the back end. We want to do that again. Whenever a message is sent, whenever someone is in message input and clicks this form submitted, right? We want to do all of the stuff in state like we were doing before, but now we want to make a fetch request to our backend. And in our backend, we want to send the message because we want to keep track of what these messages are going back and forth. So to start, I'm going to go to my app.js file and I'm going to clean out all of the messages here. I'm actually just going to comment them out because when I first open my app, I don't want there to be any messages to start. I just want it to be a blank slate and then I can send a message and go from there. So now I've got that commented out. And if I go to my browser and I go to my localhost 3000, I've got a nice clean blank slate. Great. Good starting point. App.js, comment out everything that's in the array, but not the array itself. So now we've got an empty array. Now, when I send a message, I'm going to do all the set messages stuff, but I'm also going to make a fetch request. And now, where do I want to fetch to? I want to fetch to HTTP localhost 3001 /message. Okay, but because we are sending a new message, because we are posting to our API, we want to send it some additional information. The way we are going to send that message is with the post method. And when we post, we are going to be posting some JSON. So because we're posting JSON, we've got to tell it in the headers, hey, your content type is application JSON. And when we send that message, what we are going to do is also send the body. And we just said we're going to send the body as application JSON. So what do we need to do? We need to take our JSON and stringify it. Okay. Finally, after we do all of that crap, what we want to do is we want to send in the text from the message text that's coming in from right here. Okay. Got our fetch working, but when we go to our browser and actually try to use it, if I pop open the console here and I type in ABC and hit send, my ABC shows up here, but the goal is that we're sending these messages to the backend. So if I look in my URL, I get a post HTTP localhost. If I spelled local right, I get an error that says access to fetch at 3001 message from 3000 has been blocked by cores. That is because by default, Express will only respond to requests on its same port. It will only respond to requests on the same domain or port. So because our front end is on 3000 and our back end is on 3001, CORS is blocking our request. So what we need to do is we need to say, hey, Express, allow that cross origin request. Allow the origin of the request localhost 3000 to cross over to 3001. So the way we do that is in our Express code. What we're going to do is we're going to say const CORS equals require. Now, normally we would need to npm install our CORS, but because we installed body parser, CORS, and Express all at the same time, we don't need to do that. We installed it in advance of us actually requiring it in. So when we come down here, we can say server, go use CORS. Okay. So we come back over here. I'm going to take a break in 1 second. We're going to hit send. And now we get a different error. The error that we get is this 404 not found. Okay. Well, I'm looking at my API and I have this slash here, but we don't have a slash message yet. So what we need to do is say, hey, server, when a post request comes in to the message, have our rec and res like always, and res.send something like message received. Okay, so I come back over here, I refresh, I do ABC, I hit send. Now I don't have any error here. But remember, this is not our only console. We do have another console. This is our front end console. This is the console for our back end. So in order to test to make sure all of this is working, I'm going to add a console log here that says we got a message. So now when I send ABC and I go to my back end, now it says we got a message down here. And if I come back over and I hit send again, now we got a message. So let's take a break there and make sure that you're able to wire up your front end fetch, your back end post, and make sure that you've got CORS set up so that when you make a request from your front end by hitting that send button, we got a message coming out. I'm going to try and arrange this so you can see everything. Should be good. And I'm going to start the poll. If I lost anyone at any of those steps, just let me know what step and we can review.
I have a question.
Yep.
I think that when I thought I was opening my front end, I opened up day 4. And so now it has day 4 and it has chat back end and chat front end.
So just close day 4 and open the front end instead.
So whatever I saved inside of there is still going to be there?
Yes.
Oh, so close that. Okay, now it looks normal. I was like, how did I break it again?
Hey, Max, question.
Mhm.
In your terminal, is there a reason why it says we got a message twice and mine say we got a message once?
Just click the send button again in your front end and it's going to send it again.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks.
Strange, to catch up, you may want to just open both of my live shares if you don't already have them open. The links are in the Slack channel, and just copy my server.js and my message input.js into your own. That should kind of leapfrog you to where we're at and should get you caught up. And if not, I can help you during the break to make sure you're on track. All right, we only got 4 votes in. You don't need to ride the struggle bus yourself. If you've got questions, I'm happy to help you there.
I'm always on the struggle bus. I'll go. I got something to say. A second. Oh, I think I know what it is. And then my code is here.
So in your, that errors in your front end, and it's going to be scroll down to where you in message input. And your content type is missing a piece there. What kind of content are we sending?
1 second. Oh, the application JSON. Got it.
You got it.
You can exit on me.
Okay. Also be careful. You've got on line 11 of your backend some credential something that I think auto completed on you. That should just say res.send. There you
Thank
go.
you. Random question.
Mm-hmm.
It automatically knows to use the JSON like that? Or did we already put JSON somewhere else that was like lit up?
Where? Here?
In the you know how it's like a
Oh, sorry.
application slash then JSON?
Yeah,
It's like-
application slash JSON is like is probably the second most common content type that we set. And so
Oh.
that's probably why it auto completed for you, is because it's so common to say, hey, the content we are sending is JSON.
Oh, okay, perfect.
So I know this is going fast. And then when you get caught up, all of a sudden it feels like it's going too slow. So use this time to make sure, if you do have your code working, that you understand every single line. Because when we get to this point, it is not enough to get it working. When we're week 16 in, almost at week 17, if there is any part that we are not understanding, now is the time to ask questions. No matter how basic they may seem, we want to make sure that every single piece of this is making sense. So if you have any questions, please, please, please ask them now. I promise I will not rush through the last 15 minutes of class like I did yesterday. I promise I will be a good teacher and wait until Monday to cover whatever else I wanted to cover. I've got a couple more weeks with you guys on full stack. We will get it all covered, but understanding is the most important part here. Can't help you understand if you're not asking questions. So if any of this, even if you're like, well, it makes sense now that I see it, but why are we doing that? Ask those questions.
I have a question.
No, not you, Scotty. Just kidding. Go ahead.
Wait, no, I'm not Scotty.
Oh, sorry. I thought I saw Scotty come off mute.
She
Sorry.
did, and then she went back
I
on.
did, I went back.
Sorry. Go ahead, Latonia.
I just, so I wasn't here, and I was just curious if you can just walk through the functionality you all just implemented, and then
Sure.
also that would give people a chance to comment their code if they wanted to pop some stuff in.
Sure. So all of this is getting Express started, right? So lines 1 and 2 are just our Express server setup. Once we get Express set up, we'll come back to cores. Every Express server should have at least one endpoint, right? This is just our, when you go to localhost 3001, what comes up? That's this endpoint. And what we do is we use the response and we send back welcome to the API. Then the last part that we need to get our Express server up and running is this server listen. And so what we do is we say listen on 3001. And once you are listening, which we only get to this point if there aren't any errors up here. But if we get all the way down here and we don't have any errors, log out that our API is running. Okay, that was our backend. That's our very basic backend setup. Now we went to the front end over here and we said, when do we want to use our API? What we want to do is whenever a message is sent, we want to make an API call to our Express server and say, hey, this is the message they just sent. Now we need a whole heck of a lot of code to do that. The first piece of code that we need is the endpoint URL. So we said localhost 3001, that's where our server is, and the name of this endpoint is going to be message. Then we need to tell fetch, hey, there are some options that we want to use when we make that fetch request. The first thing we do is say this is going to be a post request. We cannot make this a get request because we want to use the body in the fetch request. Get requests cannot have bodies. So we use post instead. Then we need to tell Express, heads up, the data type that I am sending you, that content that I am sending you has the type of JSON. So we create the headers here, which is another option built into fetch. And we say, hey, the content type is application JSON. Okay, then now that we've done all of our setup and we've said, here's the URL, here's the endpoint that is part of the URL, here's the post method that we want to use, and heads up, the data content type that I am sending you is application JSON, and we put that in our headers because our headers are describing how the fetch request is formatted. We then go in and finally put in our body. And in our body, we just said we're sending you JSON. So a JavaScript object, a JSO, they're never called that, but I'm just trying to make a point here, is not a JSON. JavaScript objects are not JavaScript object notation. When we take a JavaScript object and we want to convert it into JSON, we take an object, a JavaScript object, and stringify it using JSON into a string that we then send to the backend. That is what this JSON.stringify is doing. It is taking an object, in this case, text::message text, and converting it into JSON for me, which we then send in the body of the request. Okay, great. That is all on the front end. Now, what are we doing about the back end? Well, the back end, we said there was going to be a post request. So we tell our server, hey, we are posting something. The method that we're using is post. Now, where are we posting it to? To /message. So this /message lines up with this message here. Okay, now what do we want to do with that request? And what kind of response do we want to send back to them? We want to respond, and we're going to send back this thing that says message received. But before we do that, we're going to just console log out, we got a message. So now, whenever I am in my front end and I hit this send button, it is going to say, we got a message. And we can even see how that's working, because if we go into this network tab, and I pull up this bottom part here, I'm just going to make the whole thing bigger. You see a bunch of these messages. If I click on this last message here, this one that 200'd, what we can do is we can say, hey, a request is being made to localhost 3001 message. This is breaking down the fetch both on the request side and on the response side. So now if I look at this and I scroll down, you can see in the payload is the request body. Hey, we sent text ABC. And in the response, what did we get back? Message received.
Can I just make a quick edit to your code?
Tell me where and I can make it for you.
It's
Yes.
I before E except after.
Oh,
Yeah, I was like, if he has it that way, it must be right.
no, it's not. This is my favorite. Let me just. Go ahead and read all of those and then tell me I after E. You would think at my age, I would have learned how to spell the word received, especially that I build APIs for a living. Nope. You would also think that our code would have a spell checker built into it. Nope, not by default.
I think that would be a nightmare if they had a spell checker built in.
So I will say I use Webstorm and they've got a very subtle spell checker that doesn't get in your way, but it tells, at least it underlines the words. So when you know that they're wrong, you can right click on them and replace it. So
Nice.
it is a very, it like will only check your spelling though in like strings or in like variable names. So like it knows that const isn't like a misspelled word and it knows all like the JavaScript syntax. So it is a very smart developer friendly spell checker.
Nice. Karen showed me Webstorm. It looks awesome, but I remember it was like expensive.
It is. I think it used to be $129 a year, and I think it just went up. They just raised their prices for the first time. But when you think about it, before I was teaching at Careers in Code, I was coding in WebStorm 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week times, let's say 48 weeks with vacation and holidays. So when you think about it, oh, I'm spending 2 cents an hour to use WebStorm at this point. So it is expensive, but it is a tool that I recommend once you're kind of feeling confident in your JavaScript. It is a tool I do recommend trying, and they do have a good trial. They also, I believe, are part of the GitHub student pack. So you can check that out. They've got, even without the GitHub developer student pack, they've got very friendly student pricing. But if you go through GitHub, you can get it even cheaper or completely free. The company is JetBrains, all one word, JetBrains. And the name of the software is called Webstorm. And it is called a integrated development environment, or an IDE. It's like VS Code on steroids. So if anyone is interested, it's worth checking that out. Okay, we haven't had anything more than 8 votes. Does anyone have questions before we move on here? Okay, so we have, we got a message sent out, but I would like my backend to know what this actual text is. So what I'm going to do, instead of saying we got a message, I'm going to say we received the message, and then I need to put something in here. Well, this is in my body, and it is in the body of my request right here. So I should be able to just go rec.body.text. So I come over here, I go to my Chrome, I go back to my chat, I'm going to pull this down, I'm going to hit my send button, and I immediately get an error in the console that says 500 internal server error. Whenever we see a 500, something went wrong in our front end, but it went wrong in the front end because it broke in the back end. So whenever we see a 500, that should be a warning message for us to say, hey, let's go look in our back end. And in our backend, we get this really nasty cannot read properties of undefined reading text. Okay, well, what it's saying is it can't read text because body is undefined. Believe it or not, even though not every single, the vast majority of API servers use JSON both for sending and receiving data, in Express, it does not parse our JSON automatically for us into the body. So what we need to do, just like we did for cores up here, we also need to const our body parser in as a require body dash parser. But once we pull it in, we now need to say, hey, we got it from NPM, but we are using it in our Express server. So we're going to say body parser, expect some JSON to come in. Now, when I scroll down here and send another message, look what I get. We received the message ABC. Okay. We're sending data, we're receiving data.
Body parser again?
Body parser is here.
Yeah, what does it do again? Sorry.
It gives us access to the rec.body. What it does is it takes the body that we're telling it that we're sending it in as JSON and takes that string that's getting sent over the internet and parses it for us in using JSON to give us access to the rec.body.
Thank you.
So it is basically doing the opposite of the stringify. The stringify is what is making it a text string using JSON on the front end. Now on the back end, we need to reverse that. We need to take the JSON string and make it an actual object. And the reason why we have to do that is the internet is actually terrible at sending objects. So the vast majority of the internet will convert the content into a string using JSON. And then when we get it on the back end, we reverse that process to get out the object. Okay. So what we are going to do, we received the message, but why are we doing all of this? Our chat app was working fine without an API server. Why are we going through all of this work? This is not just for me to teach you the back end. What benefit, thinking kind of bigger, broader picture, what benefit would hooking our chat front end up to an API server do for us?
Can you ask the question again?
Why are we hooking our chat front end up to a back end? Our chat app was working fine, right? Why do we go through all of this work to set up an API?
Because if you connect two front ends to the server, they can talk to each other.
Exactly. So if I am in my browser and I go to localhost 3000, right? And I send message ABC or ABV apparently, and then 123, that shows up fine. But I want these messages to be shared across all instances of my chat app. So now when I go to localhost 3000 again, these are gone. Now if I send cat and dog, well, I go back to my other one and cat and dog aren't there. So what we want to do is have our server be our central source to store all of our messages. So what we are going to do is in here, we initially had all of our messages in our state. But what we are trying to do is have all of these messages get stored on the server. And that way, when we close our front end and come back into it, those messages show up because the server keeps on running. So what we're going to do, we already worked on sending our message text in. Now we need to tell the server, hey, keep track of all of those messages. So what we're going to do is before all of our endpoints, we're going to say, let messages equal an empty array. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, when you receive a message, what we would like to do is go to our messages, which is right up here, and we are going to push in text that is coming from our rec.body.text and the timestamp, which is going to be a new date. And finally, because we did not receive this message, it is going to be false. And yes, I spelled received right there. Okay, so now what we're doing, that request is coming in. We're adding that new message that got sent in, the text of that message, plus some additional data about it into our messages array. Then, instead of sending back message, we got it, we are going to send back all of our messages that are in the array. Okay. That didn't seem like a big change, but now let's modify our front end to line up with that. So what we're going to do is we're going to fetch, but we want the messages coming back from our fetch request. So what we do is we say, hey, store the fetch response in here. But we run into a problem. Fetch is asynchronous. So what I would like to do is just put an await in here. But whenever we use await, we need to come up to wherever this function is being run, in this case form submitted, and tell it, hey, this is an asynchronous function. So we add in that async keyword so our React code knows, hey, we're doing some asynchronous stuff here. When you hit the await, just know that that's asynchronous code. Wait for it to be done running. Then from our response, we can get our data out. But our data is coming back as JSON. So what do? We need to parse the JSON from the response. Then we can console log out our data.messages. Okay, so now come here, I'm going to refresh. I'm going to type in 1, 2, 3 and hit send. And if I go into my inspect, I have an array right here. And that array has all of my data in it. Okay, so what? What we really just did is we round tripped the data. We made the request here. We told it what the message text that was getting sent was. That fetch came in as a request to our backend. Our backend added that incoming text from the body of the request into our messages array up here. And then it sent back all of the messages in that array, which then came back into our response here, that we then parsed the JSON out of the response, and then we console logged all of that data out. So I don't want to go on to the next step yet, which is integrating all of this together quite yet because we're close to break. So let's take a poll here. What you should have in your console is this: when you send a new message, it should say array1 and have this object down here. So let's take a break there. If you were able to get to this, you can go on break. Otherwise, let's stick around for a couple minutes, make sure you guys are able to get to that point. And then we will take a break.
I need some help, Max.
Go for it.
Okay. Screen 2. This is your code.
Okay.
That's your code. My computer being very temperamental. Oh. So saying that,
Okay, so my first tip off,
yeah, I
Is
see
that-
local host, 3,000 local hosts. Yeah, I see that now. Okay. All right, let me go for that. Thank you.
the good news is all of your code at first glance looked right. So it could be as
That was
simple
your-
as just fixing that.
That was your code.
Oh, well, my code looks fantastic.
All right. Let's see. Local
Christy, go ahead. Did I start the poll?
Uh,
Am I going crazy? I did not start the poll.
So let me see.
host, let me leave my mic.
I don't think, I didn't do the course thing. I don't think I did that.
Okay. Do you want to go to your code? Or did you accidentally share the wrong monitor?
No, this is, did I? Did you see? that?
I've got join a live Zoom demo.
Oh, no, yeah, I did. Let me see. How do I fix it? Share screen.
Okay, so you've got a connection refused, which normally means your backend server is not running. So you need to open a terminal and npx nodemon server.js. Okay, now you've got an error, scroll up that says module not found, cores. So that
Right.
says that you did not install cores. So Control C, npm install cores, and while you're at it, also do a space body dash parser. Enter, and then up arrow twice. Enter. Okay, now go to your front end in the browser and just hit the send button. And that may be exactly what you want.
Oh.
Click the little arrow. Yep, you're all caught up.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Zach, go ahead. Sorry, Christy, you don't have to unmute.
When I input a message in the console, it comes back saying undefined.
Okay, let's get some definition then. Okay, so go to your front end code. Okay, I don't see any problems there. So let's go to your. Nope, I don't see any problems. Let's go to your backend code. Ah, I see your problem. So we did the push right here, and all of that is good. But what we did is we modified this send to send back, instead of sending message colon received, we just send back all of the messages. So just delete out that string and the colon and just put an S at the end of messages. And that's a really good note of whatever is getting sent back from our back end, we need to make sure lines up on our front end. Oh, so you just need a, yep. And then you should be completely fixed. Good to go.
Thank you.
Some say hello, I say hello. Nicole, go ahead. You're muted, but I don't see any problems there.
My rec is not orange, so.
That's fine. We're not using rec.
Oh, all right. Let me just double check over here then.
Okay,
Okay.
so,
My wait.
okay, so it's telling you right there, unexpected reserved word await. What do we know about await? First of all, where is that error? It's right there. Yep. So it's in our front end. What do we know about await? Before we can use await, what do we have to do?
Async. Oh my gosh, I forgot. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Where did my async go then?
Where is it supposed to go?
Oh, here.
Yep. Before the parentheses. Yep. So at this point in the program, we really want to be reading our error messages, right? Because those error messages are literally telling us exactly what the error is and where to fix it. So we really want to read those error messages and not just go, oh, I got an error, I need Max's help. But read the error message because it is telling you what is wrong. And if we know what is wrong, we know how to fix it. 90% of my day I spend fixing bugs, and 90% of that time I spend just trying to find the bug. Fixing the actual bug only ever takes a couple minutes, right? But it's finding the bug, which is often the problem. So we really want to read those error messages and say, all right, unexpected keyword await or whatever it was, right? What do you mean it's unexpected? You know, what do you mean you don't know what await is? Oh, it's not saying that you don't know what await is. It's just saying that you were not expecting there to be an await there. Why is that?
Got it.
Stranjay, you're up.
Yeah, I just need help getting caught up. I'm just getting one error message, so I just need help with that.
Sure.
I think I forgot something in mine, but I can't find it. Yeah. It said my use state is not defined, but it's there.
Oh,
And
all you need to do is go all the way up to the top.
yeah,
And, oh,
right.
but that's in messages list. Look at, oh, no. Oh, it's just saying it's defined but never used. So that's not really an error. That's just a warning.
Okay.
So do you have any errors anywhere, or like, is it working? So what you're missing is after line 23, you have to parse your JSON and then console log out the data.messages. I'm sorry, line 23 in message input. So you're missing like, enter there. You're missing 2 lines of code there. So I'm going to let you try that and see if that catches you up. And if not, I'm going to come back to you.
Okay.
Doug, go ahead.
So I had the exact same issue as Stranjay, but I went and looked at your code. It does not have that warning. And at the top, my const message text and set message text equals use state.
Yep.
Message text is blue, but set message text is yellow, whereas in yours, they're both blue. And I looked through the code and it seems like it is using.
So do you have this on change here?
Yes.
And that warning you're getting is definitely in message input and not in message list.
Messages list. Never mind. Thank you.
One of our employees' computers is a little on the slow side. So I'll write out some code and it will like highlight it and be like, no, your syntax is wrong. And I'm like, I'm not crazy. My syntax is not wrong here. Like, I know my JavaScript. And then like 15 seconds later, the computer will catch up and be like, no, we actually read your code. You're good to go. Like the syntax is fine. And so there was a minute of like insanity for me where I'm reading it over and I'm like, I'm seeing both of the curly braces there. Like, I know that is not a curly brace problem. And then VS Code literally catches up and was like, oh, no, it's fine. We were just being a little slow. We actually read through it. So sometimes it is actually VS Code who is like trying to process your code. Other times you're like, I see it using the set state right here, and then it ends up being in another file. Wayne, go ahead with your question. I have not forgotten about break, by the way. We will take a break. I just want to make sure that people are caught up before we go on it.
It's the same question with the await in line 15. I'm not sure.
Around the messages text?
No, that's a different error message.
Okay, share your screen so I can see what you're looking at.
Should be this.
Oh, it's coming through. Okay. Okay, so it's telling you unexpected reserved word await. What do we know about await? Whenever we use await, what do we need to add?
Not following.
Okay, whenever we use the keyword await, what is that await doing? It's telling the computer wait on what kind of code?
It was waiting on fetch request.
Yes, and because that fetch request runs in the background, what kind of code is that considered?
JSON object.
Asynchronous.
Okay, yeah.
Because it's running in the background, it is asynchronous code. That's why we need to use await. But we need to tell the computer, because we're using await, heads up, we need to run this code asynchronously. So you need to scroll up, and what you do is whenever you use await in a function, you need to tell it that it is an asynchronous function. So in order to do that, after the equals in the first equals in form submitted, you need to tell it, hey, this is an async function. Okay. So whenever we use the await keyword, you'll see me use it, and then I immediately go up to wherever the function is that is using the await and type in async there. Now it's not unexpectedly using an await because we told the computer heads up that async is happening.
Okay, thank you. I'll forget that.
Any other questions before we go on break?
What should our code be doing at this point?
Just console logging something like this that says array and has the text and whatever the message is in that we typed.
Thank you.
All right, let's go on break. I will see you guys at 7:30. So where do we leave off? We've got our messages sending here, and they're following all the way through the front end, right? And we've got them sending up in the body, and then in the back end, we're storing them in this messages array in the back end and sending all of the messages back. But now we run into a problem. What was the whole reason we said we wanted to do this? We wanted to say that if multiple people had this window open and sent, cat and dog as a message, and then went into another tab, that they would be able to see cat and dog as well. Well, the problem is that we get these messages coming back from the API, but then we completely ignore them and just use this set state up here. So what we need to do is we need to hook our data coming back from the fetch request into our state so React actually shows those messages. So to do that, I'm actually going to delete the set messages here. And down here, I am going to set my messages in the React state to my data.messages. Okay. So I come over here and I send ABC and boom, a bunch of messages just suddenly appear. Okay, well, that's kind of cool, but let's clear everything out. Let's go to our server. I'm going to hit Control C to stop it. I'm going to hit up and enter to restart it. I'm going to refresh my browser, and now everything's clear. So what I do is if I say ABC here, and then I come over to another chat window, and I say 1, 2, 3, and send that, now all of a sudden my ABC shows up, but not until I send my 1, 2, 3. Okay, what's happening there? Well, this data.set messages only happens when I send a message. So that data that is getting stored on our API is actually happening and working. That array is all in there. It is storing all of my messages whenever I send one. The problem that we're running into is that data that's in the API does not come back from the API until we send a message, and then all of the messages come in. So if I'm over here and I send cat, dog, camel, all of my messages are here, but if I open that in a new React tab, none of them are here until I send any message. And when I do, all of a sudden, I get all of the messages that I sent in the other tab, plus my any message. Okay, so we're really close because our data is getting stored on the back end. That's cool, but what we really need to do is modify our front end here to basically say, hey, when the front end loads, go make a fetch request and get all of those messages and set that into the state. So what we are going to do is we are going to do a use effect. And a use effect is basically the way that we hook in to what they call the component lifecycle in React. This is a React concept. This is not necessarily a full stack concept. But what that is doing is it's saying the first time this component shows up, I want you to run this code, but don't run it any other time. So what we do is when we import our use state, we also are going to import a use effect. Then we can delete all of this out. And what we do is we say, hey, in addition to our messages use state, we are also going to have a use effect. And when do we want that use effect to run? We want it to run when the component first mounts. That's what these empty square brackets are doing, is they're saying the only time we want this to effectively run is the first time this component shows up. And what do we want to do? We want to do something called make, or let's call it get messages from API. Now, in order to get them from the API, there needs to be some function. That function is going to do a fetch request. And we are going to fetch our HTTP localhost 3001/messages. Now, this time, we don't need to do a method because it's going to default to get. We don't need to do headers because we're not sending any JSON. And we also don't need to send in any body because it's just going to get all of the messages. But all of those messages are going to come back as JSON. So we need to get the response. And because it's fetch, we need to make this async. So we say await the fetch request. And whenever we await something, we have to do async on that function that it is called in. We then get the data from the response.json. Then we set our messages to the data.messages. And finally, the last thing we need to do is actually call that API, that function. I'm going to take a break, one more step, and then I'm going to take a break here. So we're over here. And if I open my inspect and look in my console, what's the first error that I have? 404 messages not found. Well, I'm going to go over to my backend code. What do you mean messages isn't found? Messages is right there. Why is it not finding the messages there? There's actually two reasons.
Post instead of get.
That's the real answer, is that because we didn't say method post in this fetch request, it defaulted to get. We want it to use get. So when we're over here, we don't have a get. The other reason is I said get all the messages, but this post request is to message. So what we need to do is add in a new server.get messages, and it's going to get the rec and res as always. And all this is going to do is res.send the messages back for me. Okay, so I'm over here and I refresh this. I have no errors. So I'm going to send 1, 2, 3. And then I am going to send 4, 5, 6, and I'm going to hit send. Now, when I go to my other tab that I have open and just refresh it, as soon as I refresh the page, I get 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to launch the poll in 1 second. But what we need to do, have 2 windows open, refresh the page, send a message, then open another tab and go to localhost 3000 and load it and see if your messages show up. So we added this server.get messages. So the API was giving us access now to all of the messages that it's storing here. And then we had to modify our app.js here and use an effect. What does use effect do? It literally just tells React, the first time this page loads, I want you to do the code inside of here. We need that use effect because otherwise this code may run more frequently than we want. This use effect is basically saying, hey, the first time this component shows up, I want you to run this code. Then we say, get the messages from the API. That's going to be a new function. And this is an asynchronous function because we're going to use the await keyword in it. Then, in order to get our messages, we do a fetch request to messages. Okay, that is a get request over here, and we're just sending back the messages that we're keeping track of. Okay, now we come over here, we get our fetch, we store it in the response, we parse out our response JSON into our data, and then whatever data is finally coming back from the API call, we are setting that into the state. Now, none of the code in this function is going to run unless we call it down here. It's so simple. I don't know where any of you could ever get lost. Joking, that is sarcasm. Doug, go ahead with your question.
The code inside of use effect. So we have to call the function that we define in there, and use effect just runs once when the component launches. So why do we need to put that code in a function at all? Why don't we just have it in the body?
I knew you were going to ask that question. So no one follow along with me here. This is just, I'm just explaining why we need this in a separate function here. If we comment all of this out, we now get an error that's saying we're using an await without an async. So the natural thing to do would say, well, this is a function up here. So just throw in async and we're good to go, right? Well, when we go in, when we pull up our browser we've got this weird thing in here that says effect callbacks are synchronous to prevent race conditions. Put the async in a function instead. And then it tells us async function fetch data and then call fetch data. So React, for whatever reason, has weird things happen when use effect is asynchronous itself. Because use effect is part of this whole life cycle of React and mounting things in, the async confuses React. So instead, what we do, instead of putting the async at that high level function, we instead put all of our asynchronous code in a new function that is asynchronous and then just call that function. Do not ask me to explain why React requires that, but I do know that we're going to get errors in the console like you just saw if we put the async up here. So because React gets funky with async there, we put everything in its own function and then just call the function.
Okay, so if we didn't need to have it make an asynchronous call,
you would not have to put this in, correct?
Okay.
So if you wanted to, you could do something like use effect console.log component just mounted. And don't forget you're closing. And this is not only completely valid, but you can have multiple use effects as well. So if it is somewhat common to need a wait inside of your use effect, because that is the official React way of when your page first loads. If you need some data from the API that you want to set into your state, use effect is the go-to way of doing it. But because that API fetch is going to be asynchronous, it is very common to also see something like this.
Okay, and what is the empty array as the second parameter of use effect?
So this is saying run only when the component first mounts. If you do put something in there, like if you said messages, you could technically in here say messages just got updated. So the effect can run not only when your component first mounts, but it can, based off of when something else changes, it can see that the messages have been affected and run whatever is in here.
Okay, thank you very much.
That is a more advanced use of use effect. And I can't think of any time that you would need to do a use effect other than on mount for something like your capstone. However, this is like React 200 level or maybe 300 level, right? This is like using effects based off of changes to your data are like the next level of React. But 90% of the time when you do a use effect, you're going to be doing it with that empty array. And that empty array is just going to say component did mounted or you did mount. It's just saying, hey, when this is empty, run only when the component first shows up. Okay, if that was a rabbit hole that you got nothing out of, that is completely fine. What we do want to understand here is we put this in a use effect because we wanted this to run the first time our component showed up. We then did a fetch call. We got that JSON out and we took the messages. These are the messages coming back from our API. The messages coming back from our API are setting in here. So now that is going into our state. Our state trickles down to the messages list, which is getting our messages. Once that API call is done, it then goes over each message that it got. And all of this message data is now not just in our state. That state has been loaded up from our API. Now we go over and we make that received message or that sent message show up. So again, What the poll is asking is when you are here, you've got two windows open, one localhost, both localhost 3000. If you stop your server in the backend server and restart it, refresh, you've got no messages. Go to the other tab, refresh, you've got no messages. In this one, if you send a message 1, 2, 3 and go to your second tab and just refresh, 1, 2, 3 should show up. Leaving it on the code. If you do have it working, again, go through, make sure you're understanding every step of the code. If you don't understand anything, this is now your time to ask questions. If you're still working on it, that is okay. If you're working on it and you typed something in and you don't understand it, interrupt me and ask a question. I do not think, well, maybe I can fit it all on the
I'm
screen.
gonna be honest, it's moving so fast that I'm trying to keep up that I don't even know what to ask them, but I don't.
I got a question.
Yep.
So let me share real quick. How we go about this? So I'm missing a. What? Where is it? Jesus Christ. Okay, here we go.
Where's Waldo? Okay. Where are you stuck, or where's your question?
So I have two questions. The first one is, I realized that my requests aren't highlighted, but
That's
my
fine.
response are.
Yep, and that's just because we're not actually using the request in here or in here. And so because we're not using it like inside this function right here, it's not lit up. But we still need the request here, because if we don't have the request here, we can never get to the response. So
I get that, but yours is actually using. So what's the difference?
that's live share playing dirty tricks on you. If I share my screen again, my request is not lit up either. However, the live share is not smart enough to do that syntax highlighting on the live share. So when I share my screen again, you'll see my request actually is slightly lighter, just like yours is, because we didn't use it.
So my next issue is I was able to send, and then maybe I deleted something.
Okay, so refresh the page again. And before you do anything, I see 6 right there. Okay, so now it says, now your first error. Before this, before even this is your first error that's telling you you've got a problem. It's saying that you're blocked by cores.
Oh, sorry.
It's the street before the firehouse, right? I never come from this way. I always come from the opposite side.
I'm sorry.
So you've got a cores issue here. So go to your backend code.
Right here.
Yep. And okay, I think your server is getting a little janky. So come down here and just hit Control-C. Try it again. There you go. Okay, now npx nodemon server.js. Careful. Nope. Try again. There you go. Oh, we were so close. .js. There you go. Okay, now that looks better to me. So go back to your front end. I'm sorry, go back to your browser. I always say that. I mean, go back to your browser. Sorry, that was bad. And refresh the whole page. Okay, now we not only got no errors, but if you try and send a message, Okay, so we got a different error on 18 is undefined. So let's go look at your front end code. And that file isn't saved. Okay, go try it again. No, okay, we got different errors. Cannot read properties of undefined reading map, message list 5. Okay, so let's go back to when you send that message. And we got to kind of trace all the way through here. So what we do is we do a fetch to the messages, the message endpoint. We tell it it's post, we tell it it's application JSON, we stringify in and we send in the message text, which comes from the state. Then we get the JSON back from that and set that into the messages. All of that looks good to me. So I don't think any of that is your problem. So let's scroll down in your, switch to your backend for me. Scroll down. Okay, so here's the problem. We're pushing in the message to the array, but then what we need to send back, instead of this message that just says we got it, we need to send back the messages array. So, yep, delete that out and delete out the colon. And just put an S there. Now we're sending back the whole messages array. So let's go back to your front end, your browser. Yep, refresh. And send a message. And you're good to go. Now, if you open another tab and also go to localhost 3000 and just refresh. Boom.
There it is.
Good work.
Thank you.
Seven votes in. Once we hit 9 or 10, I've got a little surprise for you all.
Okay, Max, I need some help. I don't know where I got lost or stuff.
Okay, go ahead, share your screen.
All right. I feel like I have so many screens. It's a lot going on.
All right, let's refresh because it's always good to start at whatever the top error is. So you've got a 500 internal server error. That means that you have nothing wrong in your front end. It's something going on in your back end. Okay, so this is your front end. Go to your back end. Okay, and we notice all of this stuff is going on down here.
Yes.
So let's just click into that terminal.
Okay.
And Control C. Control C. Okay, and hit up, enter. We're just going to restart your server. So whatever errors we have, we get them right off the bat. And you actually didn't have any errors in your server, or if you did, they're not showing up anymore. So now sometimes you just need to restart your server, right? Sometimes it just gets cranky and you just have to reboot it. So let's go back to your front end. You're in your browser. Sorry, just go back to your browser. Refresh that page. Okay, and now we have an error on the 500. So let's go back to your backend code. That's your front end.
Sorry.
Okay, this is your backend. Scroll up a little bit in that terminal until we get to the top of the error. And it says, stop there, API reference error messages is not defined on 15. So we've got messages there. What is messages supposed to be referencing? we're supposed to be sending back all of the messages that we have received, right?
Right.
So we're sending back all the messages here, but where do we store all of those messages?
Will we store them in the front?
We kind of push to them right here. So we know this is where we actually like add to them, but where are we trying to store them? Where does this push actually push to?
To the front, right?
We send to the front, but where do we push?
So if we send to the front, we push to the back, but we're already back. I don't know. My brain is like noodle. I don't know.
Okay, so what kind of method is push? What kind of data type do we push to? Okay, let's take it back even further. Name a data type. Any data type.
I really don't know. My brain is not good right now.
Just think, what kind of data do we have? Take it back to like intro to JavaScript. What kind of data do we have? Let me get you started. There are numbers and there are strings. What are two other data types?
Characters.
Those go in strings.
Objects and arrays.
Objects and arrays.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Whoever
so
just helped me out, because my brain is like gone right now.
what we're doing is we're taking this whole object, right? Which has got this text and the timestamp and all of that stuff right there.
Right.
And we're pushing it, and pushing it is an array method. So pushing it is adding all of the stuff in this object to whatever we push on, which is the message right there.
Okay.
This message right here, right now, is lining up with your message array right here. So when we call .push, we're saying take all of this stuff right here and dump it into the array up here.
Okay.
The problem is when we are pushing a single item into it, this is a message. But what happens when we push another message to it and another message to it? They're all going to be in this array, but now this array is not holding a message, it is holding messages.
Oh, okay. Got you.
So we need to do an S there. And now when we try to get all of the messages, the front end, the back end says, oh, you want me to send all of the messages from right here down into here. And then we're going to send them back to the front end in the response. The problem is we just need to be consistent. So when we send data back, what we're doing is we're pushing a message into the messages and the messages. So you're missing two S's there, or an S each.
Okay.
And an S19, where my other yellow line is.
Okay. So all the messages can come instead of just one message.
You got it.
Okay. And I just save it and go.
Refresh. Oh, different error. Okay, let's go back to our backend code. I thought we had it.
Okay.
You forgot to save.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay. Give it a try. Okay, so we got no errors, so that's good. Now if we send a message. Okay, now if you Command T to open a new tab and go to localhost 3000. Hey, Your message is there.
Got you. And then if I was to send another message, it'll pop up into that one.
Other tab if you refresh it.
Okay. Thank you. I think I understand it now. Possibly. I'll go back and watch the video.
Nicole, go ahead with your question.
It's gonna be a little loud over here. I just wanted to make sure I was on basically right where I'm supposed to be, like in regards to my terminal. So I just
Yeah, go ahead.
so I have this still the same, and I have this.
You have to share screen.
Oh, you're not seeing this? Bad. So I have my messages with mom.
Okay. And then go to another tab and change your URL there to 3000.
It is
No,
on
no, no.
here.
You want another tab open though with 3000.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And so what should be happening is the message Nicole should show up.
Oh,
No, I'm saying it should, like when you load the other one, those two messages should be syncing.
oh, okay. So it didn't work. So do I have to open my?
Yeah, so you've got 500s, which means the issue is with your backend code, not your front end code. And so now you've got an error in your terminal. So scroll up on your terminal a little bit.
Oh,
Okay.
right here.
Yep. And it says messages is not defined. So you've got the same problem Scotty had. Nope, that one's supposed to be message because what we're doing is we're sending in a single message to post. But when we add it to the list of messages, we messages.push in the new message. Yep. And then up here, this array is not going to hold one message. It is going to hold all of the messages. So that should say let messages.
Oh, okay.
Right. And that's not just me being anal on the pluralization. That is saying, hey, is this representing one message or is this representing all of my messages? So that's why here, because this is an array, it's a list, it's going to hold multiple messages. And when we do a GET request, we want to get all of the messages that have been sent, which is why we res.send all the messages. But when we go to send a new message, we only send one new message. So that's why this is singular here. We're only sending in one message, but when we add that single message right here to all of the messages, we add it to the list of messages. Now, what are we sending back? We don't just send back the new message that got sent. We send back all of the messages that got sent here. So we just want to be really careful there with the S's because sometimes we do use singular, right? In this case, yes, this is a singular thing that we added there because we only are sending one message, but what are we adding that message to? All of the messages, and then we're sending all of the messages back. So that's why it's not just Max is not being consistent with his S's, right? It actually is, hey, what are we referencing here? Are we referencing all the messages or just a singular message? Okay, now go to your other chat tab and just refresh. There's your hi. So you're now caught up. All right, I think Nicole makes vote 10. Run
Yeah,
through all of this one more time. So we're starting at the top, going all the way down. Here's our const app. This is not the order that we're doing things in. This is the order that the computer is executing the code. And 9 times out of 10, the order that we write our code is not the order the computer is going to execute it. And that is okay. All right, so what did we do? We said when we first open our app, when the app first shows up, we want to go to our backend and we want to go get all of our messages. So we have to use this use effect here. This use effect is saying only run this code the first time that the component shows up. We do that right here. This brackets, those empty brackets are saying only run when the component first shows up. Then we make an async function and say, hey, go to 3001, go to our messages endpoint. Because we don't specify a method, it is assumed to be a GET request. So we go here and we fetch that data and we wait for that fetch to be done. Now our front end code pauses and it's like, I ain't doing jack shit until I get my messages. So it is paused there. Now we go over to our backend. Our backend is listening on 3001. So what it does is it's listening for a request to our get messages. Okay, it sees messages and in the response to the request coming from the front end, it sends back our messages as JSON. Where are these messages coming from? It is sending back this array up here. Okay, well, that's an empty array. That's okay. No one sent any messages yet. Okay, so now we come over here. Now we've got a response back from the server, but we can't use the data in that response until we parse out the JSON. Now we've got the JSON. We get access to the data. These messages right here line up with these messages, which is this empty array up here. Okay, now what do we finally do? We take these messages and we set them into the state. Now our messages list knows to use those messages and does all the React stuff to make them show up. Okay, now our app is done. It has made the fetch request. It has an empty array. It's happy. But what do? As a user, we go in here, we type in a new message, and we hit the send button. Now what happens? Our message input goes, oh, the form was submitted. We need to do another fetch request. What are we fetching to? We are fetching to the message. Okay, but this is a little bit more complicated of a fetch because we are specifying it is a post method. We're telling it we're going to send it JSON in as the content type. And we're also sending in the body that we are converting to JSON and sending in the message text. Where is the message text coming from? That is coming from the state. Well, where's the state coming from? That is coming from our input. So whenever our input is changing, it's setting the message text. Okay, so now when we actually submit the form, we're able to get whatever was typed out of that input. Okay, now we did our fancy post request to the message. So now we go over to our Express code and our Express code goes, oh, you've got body parser set up. So whenever I see a body, I know to try and parse out the JSON because you told me in the fetch request that you're sending me JSON based off of the headers. Okay, now we come down to our post message. This message lines up with this message right here. This post lines up with this post right here. What do we want to do with that message? We want to make an object for that message, and that object has the text coming in from the body. Where is this body text coming from? It's coming from the body text right here. Okay, what do we do with that? We push it into our messages. Where are our messages? That's this array up here. Okay, now we send back all of those messages. We send back that whole array. Okay, now in our front end, we're not done yet. We get the response, we parse out the JSON, then just like we did in our use effect, we take the result of that and set it into our messages state. Okay, now that it's set in state, it re-renders, it shows up our new messages. Great. Now, right when we think we're done, what did we do? We're in here, we sent our message, it shows up, then we opened it in a new tab. So now, because it's in a new tab, it opened a whole new React app.js for us. Now that ran, and it said, oh, you've got a use effect. I need to go get the messages. So we go back to that same exact endpoint right here, and we go get the messages, this time in the new tab. Okay, now it's going to go back. But remember, the first time, messages up here was empty. But now we already sent a message, and we push that message into the array. This array is not empty anymore. This array has the message we sent from the other tab. So when we send back the messages, it's not sending back an empty array anymore. It's sending back the message we sent in the other tab. So it comes back over here. And now this data isn't an empty array anymore. Data.messages has the message in it from the other tab. So what do? We set that state in. On a scale of 1 to batshit crazy, how crazy is it that this is my favorite topic to teach?
Like 7.8, you know what I'm saying?
12.5.
It's not crazy because you understand. I think once we understand it, we'll be excited.
So on that note, here is my gift to you. I would like you to take the next 15 minutes and go take a break. I am going to post this video, and before Monday's class, I'm going to do the same thing that we did for the to-do list code. I'm posting my app.js and my message input file and my server.js file. I would like you to watch the last 15 minutes of this class as many times as it takes you to understand it, then go into these 3 files, and you don't even have to explain it. This assignment, I'm asking you just to number what steps happen when. So what we want to number is we're going to get you started here. The first thing that happens when we load this app is we make the fetch request to the server. So all we're going to do is on this line, we're just going to say number 1. Okay, now where does this go? We don't get the response back right away. We need to go to our backend. This goes to messages over here. Messages over here is right here. So it goes to number 2. Now, what does it do? It sends back all the messages. That's number 3. Where does it send all the messages to? To number 4. So what I want you guys to do is continue this out, right? This is going to be part 1. Get the messages. This is going to be part 2. Send a new message. This is part 1. This is part 2. So now what you need to do is align those up. Keep going. Here, let's make this a little bit clearer. Part A, part, line this up, sorry, so that makes more sense. So what I want you to do is keep going on these numbers. So you've got number 1, we make the request. Where does that request go? That goes to number 2 here. Then what happens? Oh, number 3, it sends back the messages. Where does it get those messages from? Actually, it gets the messages from number 4 and then sends them back to number 5. So keep going on these steps here. You may hit some lines multiple times, and that's okay. This messages is going to get referenced a couple times. So your job is you don't need to explain this code. All you need to do is add in the numbers for the order that these are executing. And if you get stuck and confused, you're going to go to the last now 18 minutes of this video clip, and I just walk through everything in the right order. So if you get stuck on this homework, I've actually given you the answers already. You just need to type out those numbers to make sure you understand it all.
Okay, Max.
Okay, on a scale of 1 to definitely fried, how fried are your brains?
Definitely fried.
Okay, pass, definitely fried.
I'm 6. I'm like a 6.
I want throw a couple F's in the definitely between fried.
Thanks.
Great. You don't need to fill out your feedback form. I fried all your brains, so I did full stack teaching right. I'm good to go. Just kidding. If you have not filled out a daily feedback form yet, please fill one out by the end of the weekend. I know this is a hard topic, but don't fill out your feedback form until you try this exercise, because I know it's a lot going on, but when you're able to understand the order that it is executing, you are then able to understand why it is executing in that order. And then you are able to actually write this code yourself. I'm not expecting you to go this weekend and start creating a backend for your capstone. I'm not suggesting that. But we will, believe it or not, be at that point in a week or two where you're feeling so comfortable with this. You're like, Max, shut up about body parser. I created an Express server in 30 seconds. You will get to that level of being comfortable here. But baby step it. Let's figure out the order that this code is happening first, and then we'll be able to figure out what that code is actually doing on each of those steps. And then we eventually get to the point of being able to write it ourselves. And Latonia, please confirm that I'm not crazy, because I am sure that you felt fried as well and going through this in cohort 2.
Yeah, he's not crazy. He's just excited, I guess.
So Nicole, I'm actually giving you 9 minutes back on class. We're going to wrap it up a little early this week. I am pretty sure at this point, I could just crack eggs and start sizzling them on top of all of your brains. There is no point in continuing here, but this is a functional full stack project. And if you did a little bit more work on this to make edit and delete work, which we will do on Monday, this is a full stack project that you can add to your portfolio. You guys are now officially full stack developers. Once we get edit and delete working on Monday, now we go back to this and we do it all over again, not from scratch, but we get our database working. And then we go another step further and we get a shortcut for our database working. And then once we do all of that, we set up a whole new project and do it all over again in React, and setting up a new server and making sure we understand step by step. So I don't want you guys to think that because it's Thursday and it's the end of the week that you have to get all of these concepts. We have at least another 2 weeks of full stack going. And then on top of that, we've got even more time built in for a project week and all of that stuff. So the good news is we are running out of new topics to cover. I think we only have another week of new topics, and it's all building on top of this. So we're nearing the end of the curriculum, but we still have time left. So now we get the practice over and over again to actually solidify these concepts. Okay, I will go let you enjoy your fried brains. Please take your dipping sauce of choice into this weekend.
Thank you,
And I will see
Mac.
you
Have
guys
a
all
good
later.
night.
Have a great weekend,
Office
everybody.
hours, office
Bye.
hours, office hours,
Oh.
office hours.
We'll just do 5 o'clock on Sunday because that always seems to be the popular vote.
Okay.
So office hours, 5 o'clock on, let me just double check my calendar, but I'm pretty sure 5 o'clock on Sunday. Yes, 5 o'clock on Sunday.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
All
you
right,
for the
have a good
reminder,
weekend,
Christy.
everyone.
Night.
See you guys.